My girlfriend Sarah and I were car camping in a remote part of a national forest, maybe 3 hours from the city. To get there, you had to take a main highway, then a state road, then a network of dirt Forest Service roads that got progressively worse. The last 5 miles were a washboard dirt track that our Subaru barely handled. We got to the designated dispersed camping area. It was just a loop with 4 or 5 clearings, and we were the only ones there. The place was totally beautifully empty. The first night was perfect. We made a big fire, cooked hot dogs, and listened to the absolute total silence of the deep woods. It was incredible. The second night, I woke up around 2 a.m. Something had pulled me out of sleep. I lay there in the dark, listening, and I heard it. It wasn't an animal. It was a hum, a low, vibrating, mechanical hum. It sounded like a big diesel generator, but deeper, with a weird rhythm. It was a throbbing sound you felt in your chest more than you heard with your ears. It was coming from the woods, just past the edge of our sight, maybe 50 yards in. I woke up Sarah. "Hey, do you hear that?" She was quiet for a moment. Her eyes went wide. "What is that?" she whispered. "Is it a truck?" "No," I said. "It's not moving. It's just sitting there." I unzipped the tent flap and shined my flashlight out into the trees. The second the beam of light hit the darkness, the humming stopped. Not faded, stopped, like someone hit a switch. We stared into the black. Nothing. Just the beams of our flashlights on the trees. The silence of the forest rushed back in. "That's weird," I said. I clicked the flashlight off. We waited. 1 second, 2. It started again, instantly. "Okay," I said, my heart starting to pick up. I clicked the light on. It stopped. Clicked it off. It started. It was reacting to the light. "Stop it," Sarah whispered, grabbing my arm. "You're messing with it." "It's messing with us," I said. "This is the part that still messes with me." We got out of the tent. "Let's see what it is," I said, trying to sound braver than I was. We stood at the edge of the trees, lights off. The sound was just throbbing in the air, coming from the darkness in front of us. "Okay," I whispered, lights on. I clicked my flashlight on. The sound stopped. We took 5 steps into the woods, our beams cutting the dark. The forest floor was just pine needles and rocks. No generator, no truck, no anything. "Lights off," I whispered. We clicked them off, standing in total, absolute darkness, 50 feet from our campfire. It was still coming from ahead of us. It was moving. It had moved deeper into the woods as we approached. It was luring us in. "This is a prank," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "I don't like this. This is not funny." "Me neither," I said. "Let's go back." We turned and walked back to the tent. Our flashlights pointed at the ground. The whole way, I felt this awful, crawling sensation on my back, like I was being watched. We got to the campfire ring, and I turned to look back one last time. The humming started again, but it wasn't in the woods in front of us anymore. It was coming from the other side of our campsite, by the road. It had circled 100 yards around us in the 30 seconds it took us to walk back. We didn't sleep. We didn't even talk. We packed up our gear in the dark, threw it in the car, and sat there locked until the sun came up. The whole time, we listened to the hum as it slowly, methodically moved around our sight. It would stop for 10 minutes, lulling us into thinking it was gone, and then it would start again, from a completely new direction, right by the driver's side door, then in the trees by the bathroom, then back by the road. At the first light of dawn, I put the car in gear, and we got out of there. We never went back there or spoke about it again. I don't really care if you believe me. I probably wouldn't believe me either, but I was there. My friends were there. We all saw the same thing, and I haven't slept right since. My buddy Leo and I were hiking off-trail in the Rockies, trying to find a remote, unnamed lake that a guy at a gear shop had told him about. We were in dense, high-altitude forest for hours. No trail, no people, just us, our packs, and the GPS. The woods were so thick we could barely see 20 feet in any direction. We came over a rise, pushing through some thick pines and into a small, perfectly circular clearing, and there was a campsite. But it was wrong. There were 3 tents, not modern, colorful nylon tents. They were small, identical, pup-style tents, made of old, faded white canvas. They were set up in a perfect, equilateral triangle. The geometry of it was jarring. In the exact center of the triangle was a fire pit, but it was just a ring of black stones. No ash, no half-burned wood, no soot. It was sterile, as if it had been cleaned. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded dead in the air. "Anyone here?" Silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy. Leo, who's always been the brave one, walked up to one of the tents. "Hello?" he said again. He unzipped the flap. I'll never forget the smell that came out. It was sharp and chemical, like ammonia and old pennies. It hit me from 10 feet away. Leo peered inside, then recoiled. "What the hell?" "What?" I said, walking over. He held the flap open. The tent was empty. Not just empty, clean. No sleeping bag, no gear, no trash, no single leaf, just a bare floor. "What the hell?" Leo said. He went to the second tent, unzipped it. Same sharp smell, same sterile emptiness. The third tent, exactly the same. "Dude, this is a cult," I whispered. My skin was crawling. "This is some weird cult shit. I've got a bad feeling. Let's get out of here." "1 sec," Leo said. He was looking at the flap of the third tent. "Look at this. On the inside of the tent flap, drawn in what looked like charcoal, was a symbol. It was a circle with 3 straight lines radiating from the bottom. "Weird," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Let's go. Now." But Leo was already walking to the second tent. He opened the flap. On the inside of that flap, the same symbol. "No way," he muttered. He ran to the first tent. He ripped the flap open. Same symbol. They were all marked from the inside. I stared at him. The implication of that hit me like a physical blow. The symbols weren't for us. They were for them. Drawn by people or something that was inside the tents. We didn't just walk away. We ran. We scrambled out of that clearing, looking over our shoulders, and got back on our bearings. We hiked 2 more miles before we even spoke. We didn't stop until we got to the ranger station and told him what we saw. The ranger's face went ash white. He stopped smiling and physically recoiled from the counter. His eyes locked on us. You're sure?" he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Yeah," Leo insisted. 3 white canvas tents in a triangle. "Why are you looking at us like that?" The ranger looked past us, toward the door of the station, as if he was afraid someone might overhear. He grabbed a notepad. "You're going to tell me exactly where you saw them. Now." "What's going on?" I asked. He looked down at his counter, then back up at us. "We don't allow canvas tents in this park. They haven't been on an approved gear list since before I started working here. Decades." I looked at Leo. "So what does that mean?" "Old campsite." The ranger leaned in, his voice dropping so low we had to lean in to hear him. "It means you saw something you shouldn't have, and you're lucky you got out." "Lucky? What are you talking about?" Leo tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. The ranger's eyes were cold. The last time anyone reported seeing that was in IT5. The geology team, 3 men, also reported 3 white canvas tents. "What happened to them?" I whispered, my stomach tightening. "They never came back," the ranger said. "We sent a search and rescue team. They found the camp, or what was left of it. The official report says a bear got to them, ripped the tents to shreds." He paused, and this is the part I can't get out of my head. "There was one thing the SR team never put in that report," he said, his voice shaking. "The tents weren't ripped from the outside in. They were ripped from the inside out. Like something was trying to escape all 3 tents at once." A cold sweat broke out on my neck. He stood up straight, and took a deep, shaky breath. But that's not the part that gets me. The SR team, they reported 3 tents, ripped from the inside out, but they only found 2 bodies. What about the 3rd geologist? I asked. The ranger just stared at me. They never found him, and you two, you just told me you found 3 perfectly clean tents. He didn't have to say anything else. We both understood. The tents had been reset, and the 3rd man, he was still out there, waiting. Every time I go camping now, I think about that clearing. I think about what would have happened if we hadn't noticed, if we'd set up our tent and gone to sleep. I don't let my mind go there. I can't, because I'm not sure we would have ever woken up. This happened on a solo backpacking trip in the Sierra Nevadas. I was hiking the John Muir Trail, but I had gone off-map for a couple of days to explore a less trafficked chain of lakes, the kind of remote where you're rationing your satellite phone battery. I hadn't seen another person for almost 2 days. The silence was incredible. The only sound was the wind, my own breathing, and the crunch of my boots on the gravel. After a long day, I found a perfect spot to make camp for the night. It was on a small, exposed bluff, giving me a perfect 360-degree view of the valley below and the sharp granite ridge on the other side. As I was pumping water from my filter, I stood up to stretch and scan the area. Just a habit, checking for bears or other campsites. And I froze. On the next ridge over, maybe 300 or 400 yards away, a man was standing. He was a perfect, sharp silhouette against the setting sun. He was staring directly at my campsite. My first thought was, oh cool, another hiker. I gave that big, friendly, we're in this together hiker wave. He didn't wave back. He just stood perfectly still. I lowered my arm, feeling a little stupid. Maybe he didn't see me. I cupped my hands around my mouth. Hello, I yelled. My voice echoed across the valley, sounding thin and small. No response, no movement at all. It was unsettling. I told myself to stop being weird. He's just another hiker. Maybe he's setting up his own camp. Maybe he's just taking in the view. I tried to ignore it. I went about my chores. I set up my tent. I unrolled my sleeping bag. I got my stove going, but I couldn't shake the feeling. Every few minutes I'd look up. He was still there, still in the same spot. The sun went down, and the world turned that deep, cold blue of twilight. I looked up again. I could just barely make out his shape against the last light in the sky. He hadn't moved an inch. No tent, no sign of a camp, no campfire, no headlamp, just him. A cold, sharp feeling of dread started to creep in. This wasn't normal. This wasn't what hikers do. My heart was doing a low, heavy thud. I told myself to be rational. Maybe he's a photographer waiting for the stars. Maybe his gear is just out of sight. But I knew I was lying to myself. I ate my food quickly, not really tasting it, and packed everything into my bear canister. I got in my tent and zipped the fly up tight. I tried to read my book, but I couldn't focus. I kept listening. I couldn't sleep. Every snap of a twig, every rush of wind, I was wide awake, my eyes fixed on the side of the tent. I must have drifted off at some point, because I woke up to a dead, moonless dark. I checked my watch, 3:04 a.m. That's when I heard it. A crunch. It wasn't an animal. An animal, a deer, a bear, has an uneven rhythm. 4-legged. This was a crunch, pause, crunch. It was 2-legged. It was a footstep, and it was close, maybe 30 feet from my tent. My heart stopped. It literally felt like it seized in my chest. I held my breath, my entire body rigid. I could hear my own pulse thumping in my ears, a high-pitched whine, another crunch, closer, then a scrape, like a boot on granite. I fumbled in the dark for my high-powered flashlight, my hand shaking so badly I could barely find the switch. It's a bear, I whispered to myself. It's a bear, but I knew it wasn't. I clicked the flashlight on, aimed the beam at the tent door, and with my other hand, I grabbed the zipper and ripped the fly open in one violent tear. I flooded the campsite with light. Nothing. My camp chair and my bear canister were exactly where I'd left them. The trees were still. I panned the light in a wide arc, the beam cutting the total darkness. Nothing. Just trees. The relief was so intense, I almost laughed out loud. "I'm an idiot," I whispered. "I'm losing my mind. It was just a deer." I was so relieved, so sure I had imagined it all, that I decided to just check the ridge one last time, to prove to myself how stupid I was being. I aimed my flashlight beam across the valley, up to the spot on the ridge where he had been standing. He was gone, of course. The ridge was empty. I smiled. "See? Just a hiker. Went to bed ages ago." My beam panned down from the empty ridge, down the rocky slope of the valley, across the dark river of trees. And then it stopped. He wasn't on the ridge. He was at the bottom of my bluff, maybe 20 yards away from my tent. He was standing half hidden behind a thick pine tree, perfectly still, his head tilted up, just staring right at me. He had moved from 400 yards away to 20 yards away in total darkness, without making a sound, until he was right on top of me. I didn't pack. I didn't even put my boots on. I grabbed my boots, my satellite phone, my keys, and my backpack, and I just ran. I scrambled down the back of the bluff, my socks slipping on the rock, and just crashed through the forest. I ran 6 miles in the pitch-black dark, with my flashlight bouncing everywhere until I hit the ranger station at the trailhead. I never went back for my tent. I ended up sleeping at the ranger station, and the next morning I went back there with the ranger, and all my stuff was completely untouched, the only difference being that whoever it was had left footsteps leading to my tent,